Part 10. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 91. After 3 injections of anesthetic needles, the finless porpoise did not faint after 20 minutes. Professor Chu was completely dumbfounded. You know, these anesthetic needles are specially used for large animals. Even an African elephant can't last more than 3 to 5 minutes. Of course, the finless porpoise is much smaller than the elephant, so the injection volume is relatively small. But under the same dose, the Beiji dolphin will faint in 2 minutes at most. The large finless porpoise with similar size and body structure can't last more than 5 minutes anyway. The dose injected to the small finless porpoise is less, only half of that of the large finless porpoise, but it is enough. No matter what, it is impossible for it not to faint after 20 minutes, but the actual situation is that the 3 finless porpoises are fine, and the 3 injections of anesthetic seem to have expired collectively. Another shot, Professor Chu said with gritted teeth. We can't keep dragging it on like this. The leaders of the 2 cities have made a decision. The matter must be resolved as soon as possible. If they can't take the finless porpoises away, the finless porpoises will have to stay in Yangchuan. It was almost 8 o'clock. If they delayed until the zoo opened and tourists came in, things would become very troublesome. Even if they knocked out the finless porpoise, the onlookers might not let them take it away. So the second wave of anesthetic needles flew out again, and the 3 sharpshooters performed steadily again, hitting the finless porpoise with every shot. Time passed by minute, and Professor Chu and a group of provincial capital staff were so anxious that they were spinning in place like ants on a hot pot, but the finless porpoise still did not faint, and there was not even a sign of fainting. It kept shaking its head and flirting with Su Ming. Another 20 minutes passed. Professor Chu really had no choice. He looked at the anesthetic gun with a hesitant expression, and was reluctant to make a decision to shoot the 3rd time. Too much anesthetic injection would cause irreversible damage to the animal. Although the finless porpoise had not fainted yet, according to Professor Chu's experience, 2 anesthetics had reached the limit. If another shot was given, the finless porpoise might faint. But more likely, after fainting, it would never wake up. Besides, who can guarantee that the finless porpoise will faint after the 3rd shot? If they still don't faint after the 3rd shot, do they have to be shot one after another? If they don't obey, they will be beaten until they die. As he thought about it, a layer of sweat oozed out of Professor Chu's bald forehead. Old Chu. Director Song walked to Professor Chu's side, patted Professor Chu on the shoulder, and said in a very calm tone, "You and I have been friends for life. I know what you are thinking. Since it is all for the good of these animals, why are you so persistent in sending them to the protection center?" But, hey, Professor Chu struggled for a long time in his heart, and finally sighed deeply. "Come here," old Chu waved at Su Ming, motioning him to come over, and he had something to say to him. Su Ming is now half dead tired. Logically speaking, the finless porpoises, both big and small, would not be able to survive after the 1st shot of anesthetic. It was because he had been secretly using his mental power to resist the anesthetic in the finless porpoise's body that the finless porpoise barely did not faint. It was a bit like in martial arts novels, when the porpoises were poisoned, Su Ming used his inner strength to help them force the poison out of their bodies. The anesthetics made by medicine nowadays are quite powerful. 3 porpoises, 2 rounds of anesthesia, a total of 6 shots, so many doses together, are enough to knock down an elephant. Although Su Ming's mental strength is strong, it is still hard for him to force so many toxins out of the porpoises. The porpoises did not faint, but he himself was a little dizzy and tired. If he had a few more shots, he might not be able to stand it. Su Ming was relieved when Professor Chu called him. "Professor Chu, do you want to see me?" "Xiao Su, these 3 porpoises may be the last 3 wild porpoises on Earth." Professor Chu looked at the porpoises in the water affectionately, then turned his head and stared at Su Ming for a long time with a serious expression. Professor Chu didn't look away from Su Ming's face until he felt a little uncomfortable. He smoothed the few remaining hairs on his head and suddenly bowed deeply to Su Ming. "Professor Chu, what are you doing?" Su Ming quickly stepped aside and helped him up. "From now on, these finless porpoises are in your care. You must take good care of them no matter what," Professor Chu said emotionally. Old Chu is very similar to Director Song in some aspects. When it comes to animal protection and scientific research, both of them have an admirable persistence and can be said to have devoted their lives to this. Su Ming originally thought that Professor Chu would be dissatisfied with him because of the ownership of the finless porpoises, but he didn't expect Professor Chu to express his opinion like this at this time. He immediately knew what to say. He could only pat his chest and keep promising to take good care of the finless porpoises. Director Song held Old Chu in one hand and Su Ming in the other, and laughed. "Little Su is very capable, he will definitely take good care of them. Old Chu, don't worry, I am here. If this guy dares to let the finless porpoises suffer, I will be the first to not let him go." "Please, both of you," Professor Chu nodded heavily. That afternoon, the two negotiation teams in the provincial capital Jiangjin City and Yangchuan City held the third meeting on the ownership of the finless porpoise, which was also the last meeting. It was still the same topic, the same venue, and the same people. Compared with the first meeting, which was full of calculations, and the second meeting, which was tense, the third meeting was very relaxed because there was no doubt about the ownership of the finless porpoises. It was truly harmonious. At the end of the meeting, several decisions were reached. First, 3 wild finless porpoises remain in Yangchuan City, and the Yangchuan City Zoo is responsible for their breeding, protection, and future reproduction and release. On the premise of not harming the finless porpoise, it can be appropriately open to public exhibitions. Second, the Provincial Academy of Agricultural Sciences and the Provincial Endangered Aquatic Life Conservation Center have the power to inspect the living conditions of finless porpoises in Yangchuan City from time to time, and are obliged to provide technical support to the Yangchuan City Zoo. At the same time, if there is a scientific research need, you can come to the zoo to observe and study finless porpoises. Third, Yangchuan City, led by Wang Jianxi, established a special finless porpoise protection group, and the municipal government regularly allocates funds specifically for raising and protecting finless porpoises. Finally, it's about rewards for special teams' meritorious personnel. Because of the final benefits, most of them went to Yangchuan City. The bonus was paid by Yangchuan City. The bonus was 150,000 yuan, and 100,000 yuan was given to Professor Sun of the Provincial Academy of Agricultural Sciences as scientific research funds. The remaining 50,000 yuan was given as a reward for discovering the finless porpoise. Su Ming, a meritorious temporary worker at the zoo. Su Ming didn't really care about the 50,000 yuan bonus. After seeing the final decision of the meeting, he immediately realized something very important. From now on, the finless porpoises will still follow him, but the cost of raising them will be borne by the government. The 3 finless porpoises cost a lot of money to eat, drink and defecate. In just 1 or 2 weeks, they cost him thousands of dollars just to eat fish. In the future, they will need to be bred and released into the wild, and they cannot just be kept in Shuahun Lake. A special breeding site may have to be built. There are also regular physical examinations, related testing equipment, and a lot of other things, all of which are money. All in all, if Su Ming had to pay for all of this, it would be quite difficult to afford it given his current financial strength. Now, the protection agency has provided this money, which has alleviated a lot of burdens at once. Those with money have contributed money, and those with power have contributed. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 92. The matter of the finless porpoise came to an end. Before leaving Yangchuan City, Professor Chu specifically looked for Su Ming again and asked Su Ming for help. After listening to Professor Chu, Su Ming nodded without hesitation and agreed, then nodded and smiled at Liang Shi standing beside him. Don't worry, you will be in the zoo in the future. If you have any questions, come to me. Thank you, Brother Su, Liang Shi scratched his head and said. As mentioned before, Liang Shi's graduate thesis topic is about the study of wild finless porpoises. In the past, where could he find live wild finless porpoises for him to study? This time, he finally found 3, and Liang Shi certainly didn't want to miss this opportunity. He wanted to stay in the zoo to observe the life of the finless porpoises up close so as to better complete his thesis. In fact, Professor Chu had some small thoughts, which could not be hidden from Su Ming. He was probably still not very confident about the technical level of the zoo, and intended to keep Liang Shi here to help. Although Liang Shi was a dull and unsociable guy, his professional level in aquatic biology research was quite high. Among the young generation in China, he was a top figure. Su Ming talked to Director Song and decided to arrange for Liang Shi to live in the zoo, together with Master Peng, in Ming and Qing residence. Ming and Qing residence is a big place, and there are not many tourists on weekdays. Liang Shi lives there, so he can keep Master Peng company and attract more people. Otherwise, Ming and Qing residence would be deserted at night, like a haunted house. The Yangchuan City Protection Team has been established, with a total of 8 people, led by Wang Jianxi as the team leader, and the actual person in charge is Deputy Team Leader Director Song, and there are several people from other government departments. Department level and section level cadres are all officials. The only ordinary person is Su Ming, so he is also the only one responsible for the specific work, and he is responsible for taking care of the finless porpoises. The 3 finless porpoises are temporarily kept in Shuahun Lake. The team has allocated a sum of money as the feed and care expenses for the finless porpoises during this period. They have also specially fenced off a water area of more than 10 acres on Shuahun Lake, and cruise ships are not allowed to approach to avoid the reopened cruise ships from hitting the finless porpoises. Compared with an aquarium, the area of more than 10 acres is huge, but compared with the living space of the finless porpoises in the reservoir, it is a bit narrow. Now the 3 finless porpoises have learned bad things from Su Ming. They stay in the protected area obediently during the day, and jump out of the protected area and run around in the lake at night when no one is around. At the last group meeting, Wang Jianxi conveyed an instruction from his superiors that Yangchuan City is going to build a small aquatic biological protection center in the zoo for the future use of the finless porpoises. Even a small protection center requires a large amount of funds. The city will allocate part, the province will give part, and the zoo will pay part. If there is still a shortage, it will be the headache of Wang Jianxi, the team leader. Protection center? That is not a problem that can be solved by a few acres or dozens of acres. Where can the zoo get such a large land? Su Ming thought for a long time, but he couldn't figure out where in the zoo is suitable for building a protection center. Although there are many open spaces in the zoo, most of them are woods, not lakes. Since it is an aquatic biological protection center, it must be dominated by lakes. Could it be that they are targeting my navy? Su Ming's eyes rolled. Don't make blind guesses. You are a meritorious official. No matter whose land is taken, it will not be your fault. Besides, the 3 porpoises only recognize you now. If you offend, no one will have a good ending. Director Song saw Su Ming's worry and said half-jokingly, "Hee, no one thought that the dispute over the porpoises would be successful this time. As the leader in charge, Lao Wang has become a big star in the city. I heard that he will join the leadership team of the municipal party committee. Let Lao Wang worry about the land and money." How old is Director Wang? He is in his early 50s, and he has joined the municipal party committee. Su Ming was stunned. Being able to grab a piece of meat from the provincial capital, Lao Wang is very proud now. Director Song is actually quite proud too. Wang Jianxi is the head of the zoo. In this finless porpoise incident, they have forged a deep revolutionary friendship. Lao Wang has been promoted. It will be easier for the zoo to ask for some funds in the future. Even if it needs to be restructured, Lao Wang can help to fight for better conditions and treatment. I have something serious to ask you to come here. Director Song took out a few forms from the drawer and spread them on the table, saying, "The establishment has been approved. You fill in the forms and you will be a formal employee of the zoo in the future. Oh, go back and write an application for joining the party. I will be your introducer." The last time the Yangchuan City Finless Porpoise Protection Group held a meeting, the entire group was composed of state cotters, with Su Ming being the only ordinary person outside the system. After finishing the serious business, Wang Jianxi said half-jokingly that Su Ming, such an outstanding young comrade, how could he always be outside the organization? He should be absorbed. An old song, your zoo is the same. How come Comrade Xiao Su is still a temporary worker on a contract basis? If it weren't for Xiao Su's firm revolutionary stance, he would have been poached. The superior leader gave instructions while chatting and laughing, and the supervisor, Director Song, had originally intended to do so. Su Ming's formalization and joining the party almost became a matter of course. Leader, doesn't it mean that it is inconvenient to contract the zoo industry if you are a regular worker? Su Ming asked, a little puzzled. That's what it says in theory. Who will explain the theory? Of course it's the leader, Director Song smiled. Su Ming nodded heavily, and once again deeply realized the superiority of the system. However, he also knew in his heart that relying on leaders alone would not work. Old Song and Old Wang protected him, but Yang Chuan had more than these two leaders. The key was that he had to make achievements himself. Only with achievements could everything be easy. In addition, Su Ming clearly felt that the zoo reform was imminent after attending 2 meetings, which was probably also a reason. Once the reform was completed, the zoo would be responsible for its own profits and losses. Who would care about the person who contracted the zoo industry, whether it was a regular employee or a temporary worker? At that time, everyone would be employed on a contract basis. After becoming a regular employee, Su Ming's salary increased slightly, and he earned an extra 1,000 yuan a month. Yeah? Didn't you say that equal pay for equal work? Why do regular employees earn more than temporary workers? Su Ming asked seriously. You kid are still shaking? You don't want to increase your salary, right? Director Song glared at him unhappily, and then explained, of course it's equal pay for equal work, but your job responsibilities have changed now, and you don't have to be a keeper anymore. Old Song knew that Su Ming was busy now, and asking him to feed the animals at a fixed time every day would be a waste of talent, so he promoted Su Ming. In the future, Su Ming will no longer be responsible for feeding the animals in a certain area, but as the assistant to the director, he will be responsible for managing all the animals in the entire zoo. The specific work is done by keepers at all levels. Su Ming only needs to patrol the zoo from time to time and be responsible for solving emergencies of animals. In other words, Su Ming is now a direct subordinate of Lao Song and a middle-level cotter of the zoo, so his salary will naturally increase. He is not a senior official. The real senior official of the zoo is only the director Lao Song, who is in charge of the party and government. The official party secretary of the zoo has almost never shown up. He just holds a position and has lived in the old Cotter sanatorium for 3 or 4 years. Speaking of salary increase, Su Ming always feels as if he has forgotten something very important. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 93. Salary is money. When it comes to money, Su Ming feels as if he has forgotten something important. What's going on? Something to do with money? Su Ming scratched his head and came out of Director Song's office, thinking about all the money-related properties he had. Went to the medical center first. There was only Nurse Xiao Liao on duty in the medical center. When she entered the door, she happened to be bent over and looking for something. Her large nurse uniform outlined an attractive semicircle behind her, and she was also twisting and turning. Hearing the footsteps, Xiao Liao turned around and saw that Su Ming was coming. Xiao Menghulu's face turned red as if he had set the program before. It's okay, come here and ask how the feed business is lately. Su Ming rolled his eyes and thought, don't I look like a good person? Why do I, a little girl, hold on to my waistband every time I see her? Xiao Liao clutched the belt of the nurse's uniform and stammered a report to Su Ming. The feed business has been going smoothly recently, and several people selling feed have cramps in their hands counting the money. It's not that the money is really too much to count, but that people who buy feed usually give them change. At the end of the day, they just get a box of small denomination bills. You've made money, hurry up and find a boyfriend. Seriously, don't spend it randomly. Su Ming glared at Xiao Liao, thinking that he would get married quickly so that I wouldn't feel like a thief every time I came to the medical center. Oh. Xiao Liao responded with his head lowered and tightened his grip on his belt. There was no problem with the feed. I went to Tingfeng Pavilion and met Lao Zhu again. Seeing the god of wealth coming, Lao Zhou poured tea and handed cigarettes. Looking at the 15 yuan a pack of cigarettes handed over by Lao Zhou, Su Ming knew that there was nothing wrong with the cruise business. Lao Zhou used to smoke cigarettes that cost 4 yuan a pack. The fish is not yet on the market, let alone having any problems. Thinking of the fish, Su Ming slapped his forehead and remembered what was going on. It's those 5 big fish weighing more than 100 kilograms. Normally, if one of these big fish were pulled out at random, even the smallest carp would cause quite a stir, and Su Ming would never forget them. But recently, all the limelight has been stolen by the finless porpoise family. The focus of the media, the public, and the government has long since shifted from the video of riders on the waves to the 3 wild finless porpoises. Even Su Ming himself put all his thoughts into how to keep the finless porpoise. Therefore, those 5 big fish that were infinitely close to the Guinness record were ignored when they should have been in the limelight. Now those 5 fish have nothing to do all day long. They eat, sleep, and eat in Shuahun Lake. It is a complete waste of resources. Some people didn't use it and it was expired. Su Ming went directly to Liang Shi and asked, "Are you familiar with the habits of ordinary fish, the habits of fish such as herring and carp?" Liang Shi was taking a camera to take pictures of finless porpoises eating from a distance. When Su Ming asked, he immediately nodded, "Yes, I've learned all about it. When I was a graduate student, I even raised fish for half a year." Su Ming was a little surprised. Fish farming was very hard work. In most people's minds, fish farming and farming were done by farmers. Liang Shi was also a graduate student after all. Looking at him with a gentle temperament, he didn't expect to be able to raise fish. Our postgraduate students at the Academy of Agricultural Sciences conduct theoretical studies and practical operations simultaneously. There are experimental fields and experimental waters in the academy. Hey, I even won an award for fish farming. Liang Shi scratched his head in embarrassment, pointed to the Shuahun Lake in front of him, and said, "Brother Su, I see that in a lake as big as yours, there is no one to take care of the fish. This is not good. How about I help you? Anyway, I spend all day at Shuahun Lake, and there is nothing else to do except observe finless porpoises." Liang Shiliu was engaged in research at the zoo, and his life was basically the 3 free things: free food, free drink, and free housing. And for Su Ming's sake, the zoo gave Liang Shi the best treatment, which made Liang Shi feel embarrassed, so he thought about doing something for the zoo or Su Ming. Liang Shi knew how to raise fish and even won a prize, which Su Ming did not expect. It just so happened that the fish in Shuahun Lake were getting bigger day by day, so it was time to find someone knowledgeable to look after them. Now that Liang Shi had taken the initiative to help, Su Ming was of course happy. Then let's put it this way. Anyway, there is still 1 year before graduation. From now on, I will leave these fish to you. If you need anything, just ask me. If the fish sells well, I will give you a bonus. Brother Su, you're out of touch when you say that. I eat and drink well here, and it's all because of you. Liang Shi scratched his head and smiled. Anyone who can go to graduate school is not a fool. He is just a normal person. Being a little dull doesn't mean that he doesn't even understand basic human relations. Su Ming smiled slightly and waved his hand. He asked Liang Shi today. His intention was not to let Liang Shi help raise fish. Liang Shi took the initiative and it was purely an unexpected gain. He inserted 2 fingers into the nearest one and blew a long whistle toward the lake. Not long after, large splashes of water appeared on several places on the water surface. 5 big fish weighing more than 100 kilograms appeared from all directions, making a few waves and swimming to the shore. As soon as several big fish appeared, they immediately attracted the attention of tourists near Shuahun Lake. There were exclamations and noises everywhere. They stood far away on the shore, stretched their necks to look into the water, and pointed. The big fish quickly swam under the river embankment on Su Ming's side. The leading big herring had a big round mouth. It raised its head and squawked at Su Ming, begging for food. The mouth of a 180 jin big black carp is big enough to fit a ball. How could Su Ming carry such a big fish food with him? So he waved his hand and said with a smile, "There is no food for you today. Not only today, but in the future, if you want to eat and drink well, you have to rely on your own labor. You can't just eat and wait for death like this." The speaker is unintentional, but the listener is intentional. Liang Shi's face turned slightly red and he scratched his head with a bad intention. Look at my mouth. I don't know how to control it. What I said just now was not about you. Su Ming was stunned, and then smiled and fanned his mouth a few times in the air, then pointed at the big fish and explained, "This is what I think. These guys are in the lake every day. What can we do? Why not use them and do a ride fish project, which can increase income and enrich tourists' entertainment projects? What do you think?" When he found the big fish, Su Ming thought about developing the ride fish project, but the conditions were not mature at that time, and then there was a dispute over the ownership of the finless porpoise, so it was delayed. Now he is relatively free, and with Liang Shi, a professional in fisheries, he can do it. Ride the fish. Liang Shi looked at the fish, then at Su Ming, and suddenly realized, "Oh, I understand, just like what you did in the reservoir that day." "Yes, I want you to help manage it." Su Ming nodded. Liang Shi pondered for a while and said, "The key is, how to make the fish obedient. Last time you fought with the fish for life and death, and finally used water plants as reins to control them. That was a lucky success. You can't take such risks every time you ride a fish. Besides, fish are not horses. If you put a rein on the gills of the fish will not survive for more than a few days. Fish gills are like human lungs. If a person occasionally chokes on saliva in the lungs, it's not a big problem. At most, he coughs violently and can't use his strength. But if he keeps choking on water, of course he will die." Liang Shi said again, "There is a lot of mucus on the back of the fish, which is slippery, and there are a lot of fins. It's impossible to ride it normally." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 94. Herrings have a row of wing-like fins on their backs, which stand up to a height of more than 10 centimeters. They are all sharp bone spurs. If a person rides on them, it is almost like riding on a row of nails. The last time Su Ming rode a fish, in the eyes of Professor Liang Shi and Professor Chu, it was something he had no choice but to save his life. but if it is an entertainment project, safety and comfort come first. Even if a tourist is willing to sit on a nail board, the zoo and Su Ming do not dare to take this risk. If a bone spur pokes a chrysanthemum, it will be a major accident. Su Ming looked confident. Leave the training fish to me, and I will also handle other problems. You will be responsible for managing these fish in the future. That shouldn't be a big problem, Liang Shi nodded. However, he was still very curious. Even though those fish were quite big, and they usually looked like family members, due to race restrictions, their intelligence was actually very low. Unlike cats, dogs, dolphins, and other highly intelligent animals, it was difficult to taming. The so-called relatives is just their instinctive nature. Not to mention fish, even a horse cannot be ridden by anyone if he wants to. It must undergo long-term professional training. A wild horse is no less dangerous than a ferocious beast. Even a tame mount is not completely safe, and there is still a risk of someone falling off. Not to mention fish. Liang Shi really couldn't figure out what method Su Ming used to be so sure of taming those big fish. Liang Shi didn't have any tricks up his sleeve, so when he thought of it, he asked Su Ming directly. Hey, I can talk about other things, but I can't talk about this. The craftsmanship inherited from the family is never passed on to others. When my father was alive, he made me swear that in the future, it will be passed down from male to female, otherwise I will die, Su Ming. Shen Shen said naggingly. After hearing what Su Ming said so seriously, Liang Shi could only hold back his curiosity and couldn't ask any more questions. Su Ming was mentally alert and asked the big fish to wait by the lake. He ran back to Feng Shui Pavilion, brought back a lot of tools, found a place with shallower water, went down to the lake, and let a few big fish wait. They lined up and swam in front of them one by one, and measured their length, waist circumference and other data one by one. They even opened the big fish's mouth to measure its caliber. Liang Shi couldn't figure out what Su Ming was going to do, so he followed behind with a pen and paper, like a little follower, taking down whatever Su Ming said. After measuring the data, Su Ming took the small notebook recorded by Liang Shi back to Feng Shui Pavilion. Su Ming never worried about the safety of riding fish. As the saying goes, people are old spirits, and trees are old spirits. Bastards can become spirits after they live for 1,000 years. Big fish all become spirits after living 1,000 years. Although they are not as smart as their wolf and dog brothers, they still have higher IQs than ordinary fish. At least they can clearly understand the fact that if they hurt humans, they will never have a good life. This is the instinct to survive and can suppress their wildness. Therefore, after having this premise, we can use mental power to train / to make the big fish obedient. Even when Su Ming is not around, they can still be obedient. Being ridden is not difficult. The problem now is how to ride it. The back of the fish is slippery and sharp. Even if the big fish is willing, ordinary people can't ride it. Su Ming closed his eyes and sketched several patterns in his mind. Then he opened a drawing software and used the recorded data to make computer models of all the patterns he thought of and sent them to Wang Hao online. Hey, Lao Wang, is there a horse farm in your father's unit? Su Ming called and asked. Wait a minute. Wang Hao seemed to be singing a karaoke, and the phone rang loudly. He probably ran out of the box and found a quieter place before saying, "Damn, I'm singing with a bunch of people from related units. I'm going to vomit." What, you just said there is a horse farm? Are you planning to raise horses? Lao Su, let me tell you, even though that thing is very high-end, it is actually not profitable at all. That racecourse owner couldn't get out even though he had tens of millions of dollars in condoms. I advise you not to make the same mistake again. Wang Hao must have drunk too much. His tongue was spinning when he spoke, and he kept urging Su Ming not to start a horse farm. Su Ming quickly stopped him. Stop, I'm not planning to raise horses. Ask for me. Ask the people at the racecourse if they can find someone to make a batch of leather protective gear. You mean, saddles, stirrups, etc., Wang Hao asked. It's almost the same, but the style is different. I drew a few sketches, as well as the size data of the protective gear, and sent them to your email. You can take a look at it when you go home tonight, Su Ming said. Okay, then I'll go back first, and they asked me to come in and drink. Su Ming shook his head, thinking that Fatty Wang was also very hard-working. Even though his father was a leader, he still had to go out to socialize all day long and drink as much as he wanted. Within 2 or 3 days, Wang Hao came to Shuahun Lake. Instead of driving his little escape, he packed a truck. There were several large cardboard boxes sealed with tape in the back of the truck. Wang Hao got out of the car and asked Su Ming, a little puzzled, "Lao Su, I got the protective gear for you. They are all good leather. But the size you gave is very strange. It doesn't look like a horse, but like a horse, big fat pig. Is the zoo going to have a pig riding program?" Su Ming looked at Wang Hao, who was getting fatter and fatter, and said with a smile, "If you don't come to our zoo, where will there be pig rides?" Wang Hao was stunned for a moment before he came to his senses. He rubbed his double chin and said depressedly, "I'll go. Do you think I have some strange disease? Why am I getting fatter and fatter?" Su Ming poked his big belly with his finger and advised, "Your body is your own. You should pay more attention to it. Don't get 3 highs or something at such a young age." This is not the first time they have talked about this. Wang Hao was fat to begin with. Since he graduated and became a civil servant, he has grown well, as if he had eaten April fat. He can grow a circle of flesh in a few days without seeing him. He is fatter than the big head nourished by spiritual power. Su Ming feels it is quite scary. Wang Hao sighed, "Hey, the last physical examination, I already have high blood pressure and fatty liver. There is no way, it is required by work." Su Ming frowned slightly, "Did you prescribe medicine?" "There is no medicine to cure this disease. The doctor said that I should pay attention to my health. Fortunately, I am still young now, and there will be no big problems for a while." Wang Hao shrugged, "Let's not talk about this, go and see the protective gear." "Big brother." Cheng Cheng was wearing a small floral skirt. When she saw Su Ming from a distance, she ran to him and raised her hands to hug him. Su Ming laughed, carried her up, and then greeted Zhao Yun and his wife, who were following behind, "Uncle Zhao, Aunt Zhao." The Zhao Yun couple nodded and smiled. Zhao Yun pointed to the boats coming and going on the Shuahun Lake and the people feeding the fish by the lake, and said, "Your business is booming." "It's just so, a small business." Su Ming smiled, then turned his head and asked Cheng Cheng, "Cheng Cheng, are you afraid?" Cheng Cheng's big black eyes rolled around twice, and she smiled smartly and said, "Brother, take me with you, I won't be afraid." "Okay, big brother will go with you." Su Ming laughed, and Zhao Yun also looked indifferent, but Zhao Yun's wife Zhao Qian looked worried. She pulled Su Ming's sleeve and asked worriedly, "Xiao Su, are you sure there will be no danger? Cheng Cheng can't swim." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 95. "Don't worry, Auntie, I'm still here," Su Ming said as he took a small life jacket from Liang Shi and gestured to Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng immediately stretched her arms to the sky and asked Su Ming to help her put on the life jacket. Seeing that Cheng Cheng was fully equipped, Liang Shi took out something like a large conch from his arms, with a row of holes on the surface. Liang Shi put one end of the large conch to his mouth, raised his hand to press the holes on it, puffed up his cheeks, and blew hard at the water surface. Woo, woo. A low sound came out of the specially made large conch, floating melodiously on the lake. This conch horn was also specially made by Su Ming. It can emit a sound wave that is not loud but very low. By pressing different holes, different types of sounds can be emitted. After special training, the big fish will swim to the shore obediently as long as they hear the sound. The different sounds made by the conch horn can command the big fish to complete some simple commands, such as landing, turning, coming back, etc. After Su Ming made the horn, he also taught Liangshi how to blow the horn. Liangshi was very smart and learned it in a few seconds. He took the horn to the lake and tested it several times. The big fish really obeyed obediently and performed different behaviors according to the instructions. Su Ming showed such a skill, and Liangshi was immediately shocked. The look in his eyes when he looked at Su Ming was different from before. Su Ming didn't care, it's just a trick. There are also people in India who blow horns to train snakes. Snakes are much more difficult to deal with than fish. It's true, but seeing it with your own eyes and seeing it on TV and newspapers are two completely different concepts. Seeing it with your own eyes is more shocking. Besides, even if it is a master of snake training, he can blow the horn to train snakes, but I haven't heard of anyone who can let another person master the skill overnight. Liangshi is a scientific researcher, and he is used to explaining everything with science, but there are indeed some things in the world that cannot be explained by the current level of science. So in Liangshi's mind, Su Ming was immediately classified as a master. Soon after the horn sounded, the water surface near the steps on the shore began to ripple, and the largest herring slowly surfaced. "Is this a fish?" Zhao Yun was dumbfounded when he saw it. The huge herring, which weighed a full 180 kilograms, was fully armed at this time, with a double saddle on its back. The wide belt went around its abdomen and fixed the saddle firmly on its back. There were two saddles, one in front and one behind, about 1 meter apart, and the middle was empty, leaving space for the fish fins to move. The big fish's face looked a little ferocious, like a big shark, and it also showed 2 rows of sharp white teeth, shining coldly in the sun. A closer look revealed that it was wearing a semi-open mask on its head, like the saddle of an ancient armored horse, revealing 2 big eyes and a big fish mouth. The mask was painted with shark teeth using water-repellent paint and then painted with waterproof fluorescent powder. There was a small copper ring on each side of the mask, with a leather rein tied to it. One end of the rein was fixed to the front of the double saddle, so that the person sitting in front could control the direction of the fish by pulling the rein. The force on the rein would be transmitted to the fish head through the copper ring on the mask, instead of passing through the gills like Su Ming did last time when he rode the fish, so as not to hurt the fish. In addition to these necessary control devices, in order to increase the entertainment, Su Ming also creatively gave the fish a layer of armor. This armor could not be made of metal, of course, but of light wooden boards and foam of various shapes, painted with paint, to dress the big fish up like a monster. For example, this big black carp has jagged bone spurs on both sides of its body, and with its sharp teeth, it looks like a strange monster from the abyss. The light wooden board used to dress up the big fish not only increases entertainment, but also increases buoyancy, reduces the weight of the mount, and protects tourists, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. There are 2 long 2-handed swords inserted on both sides of the big black carp's body. Needless to say, these are also props made of plastic. When riding the fish, you can pull them out to show off your power. This weird dress, no wonder Zhao Yun was stunned at first glance. What is that, a dragon? On the distant shore, someone suddenly screamed, which immediately attracted the attention of many people, and they all looked in the direction of the person's finger. It turned out that the big carp was unwilling to be lonely and surfaced, wagging its tail and swimming over here. However, the big carp that had been modified was now covered in golden light, so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. It also had 2 horns on its head, and was dressed up by Su Ming as a golden dragon. The only thing that was a bit discordant was that this dragon was too fat, with a big and bulging belly, as if it was pregnant. After the tourists saw the true form of the dragon, their surprise turned into laughter, and they all took their mobile phones and cameras to take pictures of the fat golden dragon. As the saying goes, good wine needs no bush. The business of riding fish does not need swimming to actively advertise. Just relying on these strangely dressed big fish, even if they can't ride, they can attract a lot of attention. Seeing that some people were watching and taking pictures, Su Ming winked at Liang Shi. Liang Shi understood and blew the horn a few more times, and the remaining 3 big fish also surfaced. From the appearance point of view, these monsters have nothing to do with fish. A guy with a horn on his head is clearly the legendary white unicorn. There are several long and thin legs around one body. Looks like a giant water spider. The most exaggerated fish was actually dressed up as a Pegasus by Su Ming, with 2 fake wings installed on both sides, as if there were some small mechanisms. As the fish swam, the pair of wings actually flapped. When several monsters appeared, the tourists immediately shouted excitedly and threw the feed in their hands into the water for free, hoping to attract the strange fish to their side. The boating tourists were even more excited. He exerted all his strength and tried to get closer to the big fish. Several big fish ignored them and swam to the shore according to the instructions of the flute. It was great now. The tourists followed the big fish and ran towards it. The small pier, which was originally small, was suddenly surrounded by 3 floors inside and 3 floors outside. Hey, hey, no photos allowed, no photos allowed. Liang Shi didn't know that big fish had been tamed by spiritual power. He was afraid that too many people would frighten big fish by taking pictures, so he hurriedly tried to dissuade people who wanted to take photos with the fish, but almost everyone took out their mobile phones to take pictures. How could he persuade him? Live. Su Ming laughed loudly and said, "Forget it today, take photos for free on the first day, and then take photos with the fish for 5 yuan a time." After seeing the big fish coming out, Cheng Cheng was so excited that she couldn't wait and wanted to ride on it. Pointing at the nearest big herring, she pulled Su Ming and begged, "Brother, I want to sit in front. I want to sit in the front." After hearing what the little girl said, the tourists realized that these fish were not just for looking at, but they could also be ridden. This is unlikely, right? Everyone looked at each other. It's too dangerous. Before Su Ming could speak, Zhao Qian suddenly spoke. The last time she came to the zoo, Cheng Cheng almost lost her life. Zhao Qian, as a mother, has a huge psychological shadow on the zoo. After more than 2 months, Zhao Qian finally couldn't resist Chen Chen's plea, and then agreed to take her to play again. Now that she saw the big fish, Zhao Qian became worried again. Among the few fish, the smallest ones were bigger than Cheng Cheng. They looked quite scary. How could she dare to let Cheng Cheng ride on them? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 96. Seeing that Zhao Qian temporarily regretted not allowing Cheng Cheng to ride the fish, Zhao Yun laughed, took a set of life jackets, put one on Zhao Qian without any explanation, and put on one himself. "Hey, Lao Zhao, what are you doing?" Zhao Qian was taken aback and immediately guessed what her husband was thinking. Her face turned pale with fright and she kept shrinking back. "No, no, no. I don't want it, I don't want it, I'm afraid." "Xiao Su, can you just come up?" Zhao Yun hugged Zhao Qian and turned to ask Su Ming with a smile. Su Ming was stunned. "She is your wife and cannot be hummed. Why are you asking me?" "But it seems a bit too bold to do it directly in public, right?" However, he immediately realized that the go up that Zhao Yun said was not the go up he thought. He nodded quickly, oh, go straight up, hold on to the saddle, and there are pedals on both sides." "No. I don't want to go." Zhao Qian was almost crying, her arms were shaking wildly, and Zhao Yun laughed. Without Zhao Qian saying anything, he picked her up by the waist, walked to the water, and bent down to put Zhao Qian behind the big herring. On the seat. After sitting on the back of the fish, Zhao Qian continued to struggle. Zhao Yun threatened her and said, "Don't move around, or you will scare the fish." As he said this, he pulled out the seat belt from the saddle and fastened it with a click. Zhao Qian was so frightened by her husband that she immediately did not dare to move. For fear of shocking the big fish under her and throwing her away, she had no choice but to hold onto the saddle and said with a sad face, "Husband, come up quickly. I'm scared to ride alone." Zhao Yun and Zhao Qian, one is a handsome middle-aged uncle, and the other is a charming young woman. They are a perfect match. They are a perfect match. They are always eye-catching wherever they go. When the couple makes such a fuss, everyone around them will immediately follow them. Laughed. Zhao Yun stretched his legs and rode directly in front of the big fish. Like a big boy, he shook the reins and said loudly to Liang Shi, "Let's go." Woo, woo, woo. A low horn sound sounded. The big herring flicked its tail, turned its head smoothly in the shallow water, and swayed slowly towards the lake. "You can really ride." Seeing that the young couple was safe, the people on the shore also gave up their doubts and looked at Zhao Yun and the others with curiosity and nervousness. The big fish slowly entered the deep water area. Zhao Qian was scared at first, but gradually she discovered that the big fish under her was very stable and showed no sign of falling into the water. Plus, her husband's solid and reliable back was right in front of her eyes. With a heart that was hanging in the air, I finally felt relieved. Still half scared and half curious, I stretched out my hand and boldly touched the big fish under me. Many small fry followed the big fish, swimming over from time to time and playing around her feet. Although Zhao Yun said that his family had a great business and his experience was extraordinary, riding a fish was the first time in his life. Besides, being among green mountains and green waters would make him feel much better, which immediately aroused his youthful spirit. Being frivolous, he held the reins in one hand and pulled out a fake plastic longsword from the side with the other hand. He waved it towards De Yugzu and shouted, "Drive!" As if the big fish understood what he said, its fins stood up, speeded up, brought up two water waves, and rode the wind and waves to dive forward. The long wind blew in front of it, stirring Zhao Qian's long hair and fluttering in the wind. "Honey, it's so exciting." Zhao Qian let go now, opened her hands and shouted loudly from behind. On the shore, the tourists could not wait to try the experience of riding fish, but there were only 5 fish left in total. As the saying goes, if you have a quick hand, you will have a slow hand. They suddenly swarmed towards the pier. "Brother, hurry up, they are going to snatch up all the fish, let's choose one quickly." Cheng Cheng was about to cry. He obviously promised to bring her to play, but now it's good. Instead, her parents took the first step. After having fun, I left her aside and saw that the other fish were no longer able to catch her. "Don't worry, I'll let you ride to your heart's content today." Su Ming was very calm and not anxious at all. "Are you kidding me? I want to ride on my fish, but I can't catch it." I had called the security department a long time ago. Section Chief Dong had already sent a few young security guards to wait at the edge of the pier. Upon seeing Su Ming's order, the security guards immediately rushed over and blocked the crowd. "Dear tourist friends." Su Ming pulled out a big loudspeaker like a magic trick and shouted at the crowd stopped by security, "Today is our internal test, today is an internal test. The fish riding project is not open for the time being." That friend asked, "Well, when will it be open?" "Starting next week, 4 days a week on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 5 hours a day." This friend asked, "Better, of course it is charged, 10 minutes per person, 60 yuan. 60 yuan is not expensive." Su Ming remembers that the go-kart hall in the city costs 60 in 8 minutes. There is only one such thing in the world that can do fish riding. It costs 60 yuan and 10 minutes. When it comes to the State Council, It counts. Good quality and low price. Only open for 4 days, only 5 hours a day, someone shouted, feeling that the opening hours were too short. Brother, this is a fish, not a boat. You can try being ridden for a day and you won't be exhausted. 5 hours is not bad, Section Chief Dong laughed. Even though it was stated that it would not be open today, tourists still gathered around the pier and refused to leave. They could not ride the fish themselves, and watching others ride them was a rare Western view. Some people with good ideas hurriedly rushed to the cruise ticket office to buy tickets, and rode to the lake to watch them up close. Within a few minutes, all the more than 20 cruise ships had been booked. Let's go, Cheng Cheng, mount your horse. Oh yeah. I want to ride a unicorn, Cheng Cheng yelled. Liang Shi strode into the shallow water, and led the second largest black fish dressed as a unicorn to the front. Su Ming carried Cheng Cheng to the back seat and got on the front seat himself. Fortunately, it was a big fish that Su Ming trained with his mental power, and he also used a wooden board to reduce the weight, otherwise even a bigger fish could not bear the weight of 2 people. Even so, after Su Ming sat on it, he clearly felt that the second black fish suddenly sank down. Fortunately, Fatty Wang was not asked to come, Su Ming thought. The second black fish slowly swam out of the port and rushed to the vast water surface. Cheng Cheng held his hands to his mouth like a big trumpet and shouted to Zhao Yun and his wife in the distance, "Mom and Dad, we are here." Zhao Yun pulled the reins, and the first black fish turned its head flexibly in the water and rushed over here to meet. Su Ming grinned, pulled out a big water gun from the fish's back, pumped the water gun hard a few times, and handed it to Cheng Cheng secretly. Cheng Cheng immediately understood, her big eyes smiled cunningly, curved into 2 crescents, and put the water gun on Su Ming's back. When the 2 sides got close, she suddenly pulled out the water gun from Su Ming's back and shouted, "Raise your hands and surrender, and you won't be killed if you surrender your gun." Zhao Yun and Zhao Qian were having a great time, and Cheng Cheng had already opened fire with a sly smile on her face. Squeak, the 2 sides passed by each other, and Zhao Qian heard a delicate cry of awe. She was sprayed all over her head and face by her daughter's water gun. She was so angry that she slapped Zhao Yun's shoulder heavily, "Look at your daughter's badness." Zhao Yun laughed, "You can't fight back. The weather is still hot now, everyone is wearing shorts and short clothes, and they are not afraid of catching a cold. As the saying goes, like parents, like daughters." Chinchin's playfulness probably inherited the genes of Zhao Yun and Zhao Qian. Zhao Qian was spoiled by Zhao Yun, and she was still a little girl at heart. After hearing what her husband said, she actually fumbled around the big bluefish for a while and found a water gun. There really is a water gun. Hurry up, turn around, I want to teach this bad girl a lesson. Zhao Qian was soaked in water, her hair was all over her, and she rushed over on the water with a water gun in her hand, like a crazy girl who never grew up. Cheng Cheng, Mom is here. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 97. A big battle started, both sides were evenly matched. Su Ming had 2 men, a driver and a small attacker. Zhao Yun also had 2 men, with the same configuration and division of labor, and they fought evenly. The Water Army Lake had 100 acres of water surface, and the most abundant thing was water gun ammunition, which was enough for these 2 crazy women to fight until the end of time. What a chaotic battle! In the excitement of killing, Zhao Yun also pulled out a plastic sword to attack the enemy driver Su Ming. Of course, Su Ming was not to be outdone, and pulled out the inflatable trident beside the second green fish. The 2 sides were like a night duel. When they passed by each other, they stabbed and chopped at each other without thinking. Those who watched the excitement did not mind the big things. The fight on the water was joyful. The idle people watching on the shore actually crossed their arms and shouted, "Come on, come on." Early in the morning, dozens of people gathered together and shouted, It was so spectacular that the sound was heard in the animal area, and attracted a large number of tourists to watch the battle around the Water Army Lake. The three porpoises were active by nature. Seeing this scene, they couldn't stay still at all. They kept jumping out of the water near the two warring parties and jumping around. Director Song and Sister Tong thought that there was a mass incident. They ran to the side of the Water Army Lake. When they saw this scene, they were dumbfounded. Director Song asked Section Chief Dong and Liang Shi about it, and then they knew that this was a new project developed by Su Ming, riding a fish and taking photos with the fish. This kid, how can his brain work so well? This idea is amazing, Section Chief Dong said with a smile. It's not just his brain that works well. Even if this method is told to others, no one can imitate it without his fish training skills, Sister Tong said. Director Song looked calm and said lightly, Xiao Tong, go back and write a report. I think the ticket price of our zoo should be increased. How about this, increase it by 5 yuan. The zoo ticket has always been 25 yuan. In recent years, the price of commodities has increased a lot, but the zoo ticket has remained stagnant. It's not that we don't want to increase the price, the key is that there are no attractive projects, there is no reason to increase the price, and the higher UPS will not approve it. First there was the Lucky Cat Cruise, and now there is a fish riding project, plus the porpoise family of 3, Director Song thought that now is the best time to increase the price. If the higher UPS approve it, the zoo will have done nothing, and the income will increase by 20% out of thin air. Hey, Director, should we also increase our year-end bonuses? Section Chief Dong asked with a smile. You Security Department, keep an eye on the Shuahun Lake. From now on, Xiao Su's affairs are the zoo's affairs. Don't let his industries have any problems. As for the year-end bonus, if the zoo is doing well, how can I treat you unfairly? Director Song said. A water battle was indecisive, even Su Ming and Zhao Yun were dumbfounded. Women go crazy regardless of age and are completely uncontrollable. This was hard for the two big fishes on the first day of working. Under such a long and high-speed sprint, even with Su Ming's deliberate replenishment of their mental strength, they were a little overwhelmed. When the 4 people got off the fish and came ashore, the 2 big guys lay directly in the shallow water and didn't want to move at all. These big fishes are not stupid, they are very considerate. If other tourists came to ride the fish, they would probably maintain their physical strength and work without exerting themselves. But Su Ming brought people with him, it would be different. If they curry favor with Su Ming, they would have a good life in the future. Today, they really used all their strength. Huff, huh, I'm so tired, so tired. The 2 of them said the same thing after getting off the fish. Su Ming and Zhao Yun looked at each other helplessly. They were so tired but still fought so hard. The fish didn't even complain of being tired, so why are you tired? Hurry up and change your wet clothes. Zhao Yun knew that he would probably get wet today, so he brought a few sets of dry clothes with foresight. Su Ming also realized that his preparations were still a little insufficient. After the official opening, he had to buy some raincoats and other things to prevent tourists from getting their clothes wet. Over there, go to Tingfeng Pavilion to change. Su Ming took Zhao Yun's family of 3 and entered Tingfeng Pavilion by the Shuahun Lake. Tingfeng Pavilion is a serious tourist attraction. It is a 6-story tower, much larger than Tingfeng Water Pavilion. The first floor sells souvenirs, and the upper floors are all wooden statues. Usually, not many people spend money to buy tickets to go up and see them. The space is very large. Zhao Qianyang and her husband ran to the 3rd floor, while Su Ming and Zhao Yun changed clothes on the 2nd floor. This Tingfeng Pavilion, I had it when I was young, and it has been vacant for many years. It's really a waste, Zhao Yun said with a little regret while changing clothes. Tingfeng Pavilion imitates ancient architecture, with carved railings and painted buildings, flying eaves and animal horns, close to Shuahun Lake, and there are viewing corridors around each floor. Open the surrounding antique wooden doors, you can overlook the kindling mountains in the distance, and you can enjoy the lake and dense forests of the zoo nearby. It is a rare and good place. Strictly speaking, Tingfeng Pavilion is also within Su Ming's contract scope. Tingfeng Pavilion is vacant, and Su Ming also thinks it is a bit of a waste. He had thought about asking Zhao Yun to bring some antiques for exhibition. However, after discussing with Zhao Yun, it is not feasible. First, most people are not good at distinguishing between real and fake goods. If the toilet used by Qin Shiwang is put together with the imitation of 30 yuan on the street, few people can tell them apart. Second, the antiques on Zhao Yun's side are all valuable. If they are brought here for exhibition, it will be a big trouble if they are bumped or scratched. It will also cost a lot of money to take security measures, which is not worth the loss. Don't worry, sometimes good projects also rely on luck. If you encounter it, you will encounter it. If you don't encounter it, it's useless to rack your brains, Zhao Yun said. It took the two old ladies more than an hour to change their clothes. When they came down from upstairs, they even put on some makeup. They didn't look crazy when they were playing water fight just now. Dad, big brother, my mom, and I are so hungry, Cheng Cheng said. Do you have anything to do tonight? Let's go to dinner together, Zhao Yun asked Su Ming. Su Ming thought that it seemed that there was nothing to do. The cats and dogs were doing their own things. The big-headed alligator turtles and alligator gars were fooling around together. Liang Shi helped to take care of the big fish in the finless porpoise pond. The cruise ship and feed business were not done at night. He was now free. Take the little monkey with you, Cheng Cheng shouted. Okay, Su Ming laughed. The little monkey Xiao Kong had grown a lot. It was okay to take it to dinner, but I didn't know if the restaurant would let him in. But in the end, at Chin Chin's request, Su Ming still went to Monkey Mountain to pick up Xiao Kong. Brother Su, please be careful, don't lose it, Xiao Ho, the manager of Monkey Mountain, followed behind and kept reminding him. Su Ming is now in charge of all the animals in the park. Xiao Ho, the keeper, is still his subordinate. Although he is unwilling, he dare not object and can only follow behind with a sad face. Its father could have run away secretly a long time ago, why wait until now to lose it? Su Ming laughed in his heart, but promised, saying that you can rest assured, if you lose the monkey, I will find some hair to stick on my body and pretend to be a monkey and sneak into Monkey Mountain to make up for it. The keeper of Monkey Mountain was so amused that he thought to himself, my little master, if the monkey really runs away, you are in favor and nothing will happen, but I will be cheated. Seeing Xiao Kong, who has grown up a circle, Cheng Cheng can hardly recognize him. Xiao Kong is very smart. He stands on Su Ming's shoulder and waves to Cheng Cheng. The group got into Zhao Yun's Audi A8 and headed straight to a famous seafood restaurant in the city. As soon as Cheng Cheng and his friends entered the restaurant, Su Ming, who was following behind, was stopped by the security guard. Those who perform monkey tricks are not allowed in, said the security guard. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 98. The security guard can't really be blamed for this. Su Ming wore big pants and sandals, and there was a monkey standing on his shoulders. He only had a begging bowl in his hand. No one believed him even if he said he wasn't a monkey trick. It was a coincidence that from the darkness in the opposite corner, a beggar with a body covered in rags and rags came out from the darkness, with a monkey squatting on his shoulders. However, the monkey's bald body had almost lost all its hair. It was dirty, small, and thin, and was incomparable to Xiao Kong. The monkey-playing old man met Su Ming's eyes vaguely across the street, showing sympathy for each other. Xiao Kong also waved hello to the chirping man behind him from a distance away. Seeing this scene, it would be strange for the security guard to let Su Ming in. Su Ming scratched his head, snapped his fingers, and the small hole on his shoulder jumped up, stepped on the security guard's forehead in mid-air, past him, and rushed directly into the restaurant. "Come here, Xiao Kong," Cheng Cheng waved, and Xiao Kong jumped into her arms. "We are together," Zhao Jian said to the security guard from a distance. Su Ming didn't expect that Zhao Yun was so shameless. When the lobby manager saw Zhao Yun coming, he ran over all the way. He kept shouting at Mr. Zhao, and winked at the security guards to let him go. He personally led the way and made special arrangements. A private room. In the private room, Su Ming picked up a piece of steamed Chinese sturgeon, which tasted okay, and then handed the fruit plate to Xiao Kong. Xiao Kong picked 2 cherry tomatoes, one in each hand, and his mouth was filled with juice. Cheng Cheng also forgot about being hungry and rushed out of the box with cheers. Not long after, he came back with a large plate of cherry tomatoes and threw them to Xiao Kong one by one. Xiao Kong jumped up to catch them. Sometimes he could catch them, but sometimes he missed them, causing cherry tomatoes everywhere in the box. Zhao Jian held a bowl and chased after Cheng Cheng. When she wanted to feed her, Cheng Cheng held the cherry tomatoes and chased after Xiao Kong. As a result, there was a large table of dishes, and only Su Ming and Zhao Yun were eating. Su Ming picked up a piece of Chinese sturgeon, which tasted good. He asked curiously, "Uncle Zhao, do you own this restaurant?" On the way in, the restaurant staff. The level of politeness towards Zhao Yun was definitely not something ordinary guests could enjoy. "My friend opened it, and I hold a small share," Zhao Yun said with a smile. "My business is very complicated, and I like to get involved in everything." Zhao Yun said it modestly, but Su Ming knew the strength of this guy very well. He was not a manager type, but an investor type. He didn't have to show his face in everything, and he was one of those wealthy people who was quite low-key. Shares are shares, and bills are bills. Although Zhao Yun is a shareholder, he still has to pay for meals. After finishing the meal, Su Ming glanced at him when paying the bill. There were 8 dishes and 1 soup on the table, a total of 3,005. Su Ming couldn't help but frown. Anyone could take out more than 3,000, but he didn't ask the client's leader to just feed himself. He only ate more than 3,000. It was a bit too extravagant. "It seems that I am still too poor." "Poor? You have graduated less than 3 months ago, and you have your own industry, which is booming. Even the city leaders know you. What else can you do? When I was your age, I was still working in a factory. Where's the welder?" Zhao Yun said while driving, "It just so happens that I have many friends who own restaurants. When the fish in Shuahun Lake grow up, remember to let me know." "That's great," Su Ming nodded. He has investigated and found that the big hotels and restaurants in Yangchuan generally purchase freshwater fish directly from Huading Reservoir, which is Zhou Jin's fishing company, because the fish in Huading Reservoir is really good, and it has almost monopolized the purchasing channels of major hotels. If we can get a share of this pie, relying on the sales and reputation of major hotels, the fish market in Shuahun Lake can be successfully opened. After chatting with Zhao Yun for a while about the later sales of fishery products, the car had already arrived at the entrance of the zoo. Su Ming got out of the car, said goodbye to Cheng Cheng, and then sent Xiao Kong back to Monkey Mountain first. Before Xiao Kong entered the Monkey Mountain, he stood on Su Ming's shoulder and bared his teeth and barked several times into the distant forest. Su Ming was startled when he saw the forest shaking. A skinny little monkey, all naked and dirty, emerged from the forest and looked cautiously towards the side. Xiao Kong jumped down in a swoop and dragged the skinny monkey to Su Ming, dancing around and gesticulating wildly, while still making squeaking calls. The skinny monkey didn't dare to say anything. He looked very nervous and kept shrinking back towards Xiao Kong. Su Ming felt that the skinny little monkey looked familiar. When he took a closer look, he saw that it was actually the dirty monkey that the old man was playing outside the hotel. The skinny monkey had a few suffocated little meatballs on its chest. Unexpectedly, it was a female. "Here I go," At such a young age, I learned how to abduct women. Su Ming couldn't stop laughing. His chatter. Xiao Kong scratched his head and ears anxiously, his hands moving up and down like a deaf mute. Forget it, let's not do this again. Su Ming was also speechless. Wild monkeys are wild monkeys. Monkeys are bold and can do anything. Xiao Ho, the keeper of Monkey Mountain, heard the noise and rushed over. He saw two monkeys and thought he was dazzled. He rubbed his eyes and looked for a long time before he realized that there were indeed two monkeys. He looked at Su Ming in confusion, thinking that you, the old man, took away one and sent back two. What did you say? I said you won't lose it, I'll pay you back with interest, and treat me to a drink next time. Su Ming chuckled and patted him on the shoulder. I'm convinced. Where did you get this from? Xiao Ho said with a smile. The key to the wild monkeys I met on the road is that people are charming. Even the monkeys can't resist. They insist on coming back with me, Su Ming said with a proud look on his face. Xiao Kong pointed at his nose and chirped, trying to expose Su Ming's shamelessness. It was obviously his charm that hooked the female monkey back. Okay. Su Ming didn't know what Xiao Kong did with the little female monkey he kidnapped. After returning to the waterside pavilion, he was a little drunk and fell asleep. There was no conversation that night. The next morning, Nangongyan rushed into the Tingfeng waterside pavilion and dragged Su Ming out of his deep sleep. Sister, please be a lady. It's so embarrassing to break into a single man's residence like this. It's only 8:30 in the morning. Let me sleep for a while. Su Ming pulled the quilt over his head and said painfully. Nangongyan came today with a mission. Strange things happened one after another on Su Ming's side. The TV station leader knew that Su Ming and Nangongyan were classmates, so he specially sent Nangongyan to interview. Therefore, she almost became the TV station's head reporter during this period. She appeared on camera more frequently than regular reporters. Today, she came here for the fish riding project. Don't be so ungrateful. The TV station helped you advertise for free, and you are not happy. Hurry up, take me to ride fish, otherwise you will die. Sister, are you here for work or for fun? Su Ming slapped his forehead helplessly. Taking care of both public and private, Nangongyan said confidently. He took Nangongyan to ride fish for half an hour until she had a good time, and then he honestly began to report on the fish riding project. There are no secrets in the internet age. Soon after Nangongyan's first-hand report, the video of Zhao Yun's family riding fish was circulated on the internet, and some people also dug out the video of the original Baibo night. The speed of information dissemination in the internet age is also very amazing. In just 2 or 3 days, the entire Yangchuan city, and even most of the province, knew that the Yangchuan Zoo would officially launch an unprecedented new entertainment project next week, riding a fish. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 99. The fish riding project has been officially opened, and all parties have done enough publicity to attract countless eyeballs. If it is just fish riding, it is not a particularly rare thing. Whether it is a zoo or a circus, there are special trainers, including dolphin masters. After special training, it is not impossible to ride a fish. But it must be done by professionals and in a special venue. And treating fish riding as an entertainment project, open to ordinary citizens, everyone can ride, young and old, this is the first time in the world. The hunger marketing that Su Ming did before, under the overwhelming media publicity, also quickly began to ferment and show its effect. The photos and videos of Zhao Yun's family riding fish on that day, and Su Ming's earliest video of the Baibo night, the number of clicks and comments were extremely amazing. On the Yangchuan forum, almost no other topics can be seen in recent days, and all are discussing this new project of Yangchuan Zoo. Riding a fish is not only entertaining, but also a very auspicious idea in Chinese history, symbolizing enlightenment and becoming an immortal, and living a carefree life. Legend has it that during the Warring States period, there was a man named Qin Gao in Zhao State who was good at moving in the water and lived for more than 200 years. One day, Qin Gao summoned his disciples and asked them to bathe and burn incense, and set up a temple by the water to wait. After that, Qin Gao jumped into the river and disappeared. A group of disciples followed Qin Gao's instructions and set up an altar by the water. After waiting for a few days, Qin Gao suddenly rode a big red carp and floated on the water. Then he rode the fish to ascend to become an immortal, attracting thousands of people to watch. Wang Engshi has a poem, "When I first learned to ride a red carp, I found a mountain ghost and a lizard." Narcissus and mountain ghost are both semi-immortal bodies. The red carp and the lizard are a water monster and a mountain spirit, symbolizing the immortals in the mountains and waters. Riding fish in the zoo is definitely not a fairy, but those fish are dressed up as various legendary monsters, which feels like cosplay. Now the zoo can almost be described as the focus of everyone's attention. Every day, tourists come to ask about riding fish. Sister Tong's office receives several calls from media every day, wanting to report and interview. The limelight of those armed big fish even overwhelmed the Yangtze River dolphin family that was very popular some time ago, making a perfect counterattack. Seeing that the momentum has been built, the fish riding project was finally officially launched. As soon as the zoo opened that morning, the queue waiting to buy tickets at the gate had already stretched to the road in the distance. Reporters from more than a dozen media outlets were waiting at the gate early, ready to charge into the zoo at any time to obtain first-hand information. 5 big fish were not enough. In the blink of an eye, they were booked by the tourists who rushed in front, and the least was booked for more than an hour. The big black fish was even booked by a local tyrant for a whole day. The huge crowd of tourists was fed up. Hundreds of people lined up to ride the fish. If it was like this, one person would have to wait for more than an hour, and the person behind would not get a turn even if they waited for a whole day. New tourists continued to join the queue, and the lakeside was noisy. Seeing that the crowd was about to get excited, Su Ming appeared in time and added a new rule: within the first month of opening, each person can only play for a maximum of 20 minutes at a time, ensuring that most tourists can play as long as they are willing to queue. This calmed the public anger. Along with Su Ming came the alligator turtle. The business of riding the fish has been more popular than expected. Su Ming, with the mentality that he was idle anyway and a noble alligator turtle should not eat free rice, also brought the alligator turtle over and let people ride it like the big fish. This guy has a ferocious appearance, and there is no need to dress up deliberately. He looks like a big monster. In order to make it more entertaining, Su Ming made a big python with rubber plastic foam and wrapped it around the alligator turtle. Thank you for your enthusiastic support. In order to give back to you, we have launched an Easter egg today. He pointed at the alligator turtle as big as a hill and said loudly into the speaker, "That's Xian. Wu. God. Beast. 10 minutes per session, 100 yuan. The alligator turtle was in the shallow water, the size of a tabletop, with limbs like iron pillars supporting the sky. In line with Su Ming's words, it raised its head and rushed towards the crowd on the shore, opened its mouth and let out a low roar, and shook the rubber python tied to its body. The tourists instinctively shrank back in fear, but fortunately everyone knew that this was an entertainment project launched by the zoo, just like the horror city. It looked scary, but in fact there was no danger at all. So, the copycat Suanwu also joined the ranks of the big fish. The 6 big guys were almost non-stop. Every 10 or 20 minutes, they would go back and forth between the diving area and the lake to pick up the next batch of tourists. Although they worked hard enough, the queue waiting for the fish ride became longer and longer. The tourists who rode the fish before also became the tap water of the fish ride project. After getting off, they began to post photos on WeChat Moments and various social media to promote the zoo for free. At noon, Su Ming looked at the long queue and had an idea. He called Sister Tong. Sister Tong, ask the store to get some boxed lunches and sell them by the Shuahun Lake. Okay, Sister Tong hung up the phone happily. Not long after, Aunt Sun from the store appeared by the Shuahun Lake with a cart full of boxed lunches, shouting, selling boxed lunches, 10 yuan a box, 1 meat, and 3 vegetables. Auntie Sun made a small profit. After cleaning up the garbage from the lunch boxes, she found Su Ming, mysteriously stuffed him a pack of Zonghua cigarettes, and then left happily. The first day of opening passed like this, and the 6 mounts were busy all day. On the second day, there were more people queuing than on the first day, and there were even ticket scalpers. A few ruffian boys came to line up early in the morning. After they came to the line, they bought tickets, but did not catch fish. Instead, they held the tickets and shouted, selling them to the people behind them at 5 or 6 times the price. Liang Shi saw this and did not dare to make a decision on his own, and hurriedly reported to Su Ming. I hate ticket scalpers the most. Su Ming frowned and said to Liang Shi, tell them not to resell fish tickets. Anyone who buys tickets from others without queuing will be invalidated. We do not recognize it. Liang Shi followed Su Ming's instructions and made it clear to those boys that ticket resale was not allowed. But seeing Liang Shi's honest face, the other party ignored him and dragged Liang Shi to the grove. The leader, a little yellow-haired man, even took out a knife and threatened Liang Shi, saying that if he cut off the brothers' financial resources, he should not blame them for not giving him face. How can such a thing happen? China is a country ruled by law, and you dare to use knives on my land. There is no law. Su Ming was furious when he heard about this. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 100. In the zoo, Director Song's words are the rule of law, and at the Water Army Lake, Su Ming is the king of law. It's not very useful to go to the police station for this matter. A few gangsters can be arrested and educated at most and then released. It can't play the role of curing diseases and saving people. To deal with such people, you have to let them know that the Horse King has 3 eyes. I called Lao Dong directly. Not long after, Lao Dong brought 7 or 8 young security guards to the Water Army Lake, pinched their necks and pressed their shoulders, and dragged and kicked those gangsters to the security department. There is no king's law. Chief Dong threw his armed belt heavily on the table, with a muffled bang. Although Section Chief Dong is usually very friendly, he is a retired scout from a serious army. He is a tough guy who has fought in wars. His face is so gloomy that it can scare people to death. His beating skills are also unique. He used a rubber baton to beat the gangsters without any reason. They cried for their parents and couldn't even get up. There was no visible external injury. Old Dong, forget it. The children are ignorant. Why bother with them? Beat them for another 10 minutes and then send them to the police station, Su Ming said kindly. Hello everyone, I am Nangong Yan, an intern reporter from Yangchuan TV station. I am now at the zoo, reporting on the fish riding project. The fish riding project in the zoo has been carried out for 2 weeks, providing a great place for leisure and entertainment for the general public. According to our investigation, the zoo in this city is the first in the country, and even the world, to popularize the fish riding project. On TV, behind the reporter Nangong Yan, there was a long queue of tourists waiting to ride fish. After 2 weeks of the fish riding project, except for some minor problems like ticket scalpers at the beginning, everything went smoothly and was full every day. In order to ensure the physical strength of the big fish, Su Ming adjusted the opening hours according to the flow of people in the zoo, changing it to 4 days a week, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, with only 1 hour in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. Since Su Ming adopted hunger marketing and the opening hours were limited, it can be guaranteed that the big fish will not be vacant for a long time. He calculated the income during this period. According to this trend, the turnover brought by 5 fish and 1 alligator turtle in a month will far exceed that of the cruise ship, close to 150,000. 60 yuan for a ride is actually a convenient price. If he is willing, there will be people willing to ride for 200 yuan. However, since it is a zoo, in addition to making money, people's livelihood must be considered. There is no need to be accused of something big in order to make hundreds of thousands more, which will affect future development. He called Professor Chu and prepared to take out 3,000 yuan to give to Liang Shi as an internship salary. Liang Shi studied this, and managing big fish is almost his major. Professor Chu naturally had no objection. After thanking him, he asked Su Ming to take good care of Liang Shi on the phone. For a graduate student studying computer science or something like that, a monthly internship salary of 3,000 yuan can only be considered ordinary, but Liang Shi's major is quite unpopular, and most people do not have internship salary. It is good enough to have food provided, and it is also difficult to find a job after graduation. Liang Shi now not only eats well, drinks well, and lives well, but also has 3,000 yuan to earn. He can almost be regarded as the best one in his class. Since Shuahun Lake is contracted by Su Ming, he does not have to pay additional management fees to the zoo. Excluding the fees paid to Liang Shi and the expenses of eating and drinking for big fish and snapping turtles, the net profit of riding fish for a month is more than 100,000 yuan. In this way, with the cruise ship, the entertainment projects of Shuahun Lake can bring Su Ming more than 1.5 million yuan in income a year. Of course, the cruise ship business is not good in winter, and the riding fish project also has climate requirements. It cannot go into the water when it rains, snows, or is cold. Even if calculated in this way, the annual income of the entertainment project of Shuahun Lake must be as high as 1 million. Even for Su Ming, this is a huge amount of money that cannot be ignored, and it is a stable income. Even if there is a mistake in the fish farming business in the future, Su Ming will be able to make a good living with the income from the entertainment project. In fact, it seems that the fish farming business is unlikely to have major problems at present. Zhou Jin, the only rival, is still in the hospital. He would never have thought that the crocodile gar he sent has now turned from evil to good. Not only did not cause any damage to the fishery of Shuahun Lake, but also ate Zhou Jin's fish in the reservoir all day long. At the same time, due to the contact with spiritual power, the fish in Shuahun Lake are very friendly. A large number of tourists flock to Shuahun Lake to ride fish and row boats. Not only did they not disturb the fish, but they promoted the growth of various fish. The fish in Shuahun Lake are now well fed, in a good environment, with a lot of exercise every day, and in a good mood. It is impossible for them to grow badly. They are just waiting for a few months to grow up and talk to Zhao Yun about the supply problem. It is said that some people from other places want to imitate Su Ming and train big fish to start a fish riding business. But only Su Ming knows that without the help of animal friends, the best he can do is to let professional breeders simply ride fish. It is almost impossible to popularize it as a profitable entertainment project. The only drawback is that there are too few big fish. It would be better if there were a few more big fish weighing hundreds of kilograms. Each big fish is a cash cow that can make money for Su Ming. But this can't be rushed. It is rare for ordinary domestic fish to grow to such a big size. It all requires great opportunities. The alligator gar swept across the Huading Reservoir during this period, eating countless fish of all sizes, but never saw one weighing more than 100 kilograms, and even more than 50 kilograms were rare. If you don't weigh more than 100 jin, you can't bear the weight of a person, even if Su Ming helps you with his mental power. So if you want to be selected for the cavalry team, you must reach the threshold of at least 100 jin. Su Ming has developed a habit now. When everything goes well, he will disappear from everyone's sight, stay away from the hustle and bustle, and calm down to do his job and mingle with the animals. Animal friends are his foundation. Su Ming has never forgotten this. Therefore, even if he does various businesses, they are built on the basis of animal friends. If he forgets this, he only cares about making money and immerses himself in the world of flowers, his future achievements will only stop here. Perhaps it is because he got a son in his old age. Since he had a wolf baby, the old wolf king has been absent-minded. He sits alone by the cage all day, staring blankly at the outside world, and sometimes he doesn't eat food even if he is fed. Su Ming had just thrown a piece of beef to the wolf king. The wolf king was still the same. He looked down at the beef and continued to look outside, looking worried. Squeak, squeak, squeak. There was a sound of scratching the glass. The red fox living next door lay on the glass, his two little eyes wide open, staring at the piece of beef that the wolf king didn't eat, and scratched the glass with his little claws. Su Ming picked up the beef and threw it across the cage. The beef fell from the gap on the top of the cage to the red fox. The red fox cried happily, using his hands and feet to drag the big piece of beef into the bushes. Eat slowly, be careful not to choke, Su Ming shouted at the red fox across the cage. At this time, the wolf king suddenly stood up, looked at the world outside the cage, and let out a shrill and long wolf howl. A whoop! As the wolf king howled, the other wolves also raised their necks and howled outside the cage. The little wolf that had just fallen asleep was awakened by the sound. They didn't understand what was going on. They stared at their father in a daze, and then instinctively howled along with the wolf king, but the sound sounded childish and a little hoarse. Don't howl, this can't be rushed, take your time. In the entire zoo, Su Ming was the only one who could understand the wolf king's intentions.